He was just supposed to be a dog on a leash. But when danger came barking, this canine showed everyone exactly what he was trained for. The laughter of teenagers cracked through the warm afternoon air, sharp and cruel. A chained dog sat silently near the edge of the school field, his golden brown fur catching the sun. They didn't know what he was, not really. To them, he was just some mutt tied up outside the fence, helpless, vulnerable, amusing. But beneath the calm, alert posture was a highly trained police canine, and the mistake they were about to make would echo far louder than their laughter. Mason Carter, a quiet junior who'd transferred to Crest Hill High only weeks ago, stood a few yards away. He was still in detention, the last minutes ticking by slowly. Outside, his uncle's dog, Titan, waited dutifully. Officer Grant Carter, Uncle Grant, had left Titan in Mason's care after being pulled into an unexpected shift. With no choice, Mason tied the dog in the shade by the athletic field while he served his time inside. He never expected a group of bullies to take interest in the dog. It started small, a couple of jeers from across the blacktop, paper wads tossed with lazy arms. Mason spotted them through the window. 4 boys, led by a cocky senior named Ryder Flynn, closing in around Titan. At first, Titan ignored them, trained to remain calm under pressure. He didn't flinch, didn't bark, but Mason's stomach twisted as he recognized Ryder's sneer, that look of someone who'd torment just for the reaction. Ryder picked up a stick, twirling it like a toy baton. The others chuckled, egging him on. Mason's heart began to pound. He abandoned his seat, rushing out the back door and crossing the field. "Hey!" he called out, but his voice cracked, too soft, too late. Ryder jabbed the stick toward Titan's face, chuckling. "What's wrong, doggy? You broken or just dumb?" Titan's ears flicked, his gaze sharpened, muscles coiled tight under his lean frame. Mason was running now. "Back off!" he shouted again. "You don't know what you're doing." The crowd had grown. 6 students, phones out, waiting for a show. One boy, tall and skinny with a mop of blonde curls, Trent, Mason vaguely remembered, laughed. "What's he gonna do? Pee on us?" But Ryder didn't stop. He swung the stick again, this time closer. Titan's response was instant. A guttural growl rolled from his chest, low and rumbling like thunder in the distance. He bared his teeth, fangs sharp, eyes locked on Ryder, the kind of look that makes seasoned criminals freeze in their tracks. Ryder flinched. Mason reached the fence just in time to see Titan lunge forward. The leash snapped tight, chain rattling, and with one swift motion, Titan clamped his jaws down on the stick, splintering it like a twig. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Ryder stumbled back, mouth agape. Titan spat out the shards, snarling, the leash quivering with tension. The group of teens scattered, but Ryder stood frozen, caught between fear and the pressure of watching eyes. "Titan, heel!" Mason shouted, stepping between the dog and the bully. His voice was steadier now, clearer. Uncle Grant had drilled the commands into him enough times. "Stand down, buddy. You did good." Titan held Ryder in his line of sight for another heartbeat before backing off slowly, panting, eyes sharp. The field had gone quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. "You almost got me killed!" Ryder barked, finding his voice. "You psycho!" "You came at him with a stick." Mason shot back, breathless. He protected himself, and me. Ryder opened his mouth to retort, but another voice cut through the silence. "What's going on here?" Coach Deacon strode across the field, jaw tight, whistle bouncing from his lanyard. He took in the broken stick, the shaken bully, the tense dog. Mason sighed with relief. Coach knew his uncle. Maybe he'd understand. "You boys messing with a service dog?" Coach barked, eyes narrowed. "No!" Ryder snapped. "That mutt tried to bite me!" Coach's eyes dropped to the shattered stick. "Doesn't look like it came out of nowhere." He turned to Mason. "This Officer Carter's K9?" Mason nodded. "Yes, sir." Titan Coach's expression hardened. "That's what I thought." The other boys stood off to the side, nervous. One tried to toss his phone behind his back. Another kicked at the grass. Coach pointed toward the building. "All of you, principal's office, now!" Ryder bristled. "But now." He turned back to Mason, his tone softening slightly. "You okay, Carter?" "Yeah." Titan didn't hurt anyone, just scared them. Coach gave a small nod. "Smart dog, but keep him close, all right?" "Yes, sir." Mason knelt beside Titan, scratching behind his ears. The dog's body was still tense, his breath heavy, but the growl had faded. He leaned into Mason's touch, a sign of trust that made the teen's heart swell with pride and fear, because Titan had done what he was trained to do. And Mason knew the fallout wasn't over. As they followed Coach Deacon toward the main building, Titan padded beside Mason, no longer a silent shadow, but a force everyone would remember. The message had been delivered loud and clear. This wasn't just a dog, this was a protector. Mr. Peterson, steady firm. Everyone else, Trevor, Marshall, the rest, wait outside. Coach will accompany you. Jake, stay here until your uncle arrives. Understood? No one protests. The bullies file out, heads down, muttering under their breath. As they pass Rex, the dog emits a low, warning growl. It's quiet, but unmistakable. They pick up the pace. Coach Caldwell trails behind them, making sure no one bolts. Jake sinks into the chair across from the principal's desk, one hand resting absently on Rex's head. Mr. Peterson sighs, massaging his temples. Your uncle is a respected officer, Jake. I'm sure you understand that bringing a trained canine onto school grounds raises complications. Jake's stomach twists. Jake, quiet, remorseful. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, it was last minute. My uncle got called in and I couldn't leave Rex alone. I figured tying him away from students was safe. Mr. Peterson's expression softens. Just a bit. Mr. Peterson, I understand. Next time, clear it with me or another administrator. I'll let it go this time, but you've seen how quickly things can spiral. Jake nods, swallowing the guilt. Jake, I do, sir. I get it. A beat of silence. Mr. Peterson, you're not in trouble. The others are. Still, I'd recommend laying low until your uncle arrives. Avoid any more confrontations. My secretary can show you to the staff lounge if you'd prefer. Jake, relieved. That'd be great. Thanks. He scratches behind Rex's ears. A quiet thank you. Together they exit the office, led by a kindly admin assistant. Int, hallway, continuous. Through the front windows, Jake spots Trevor and his gang slouched on a hallway bench. Their expressions? Sullen, miserable. Their day is just getting started. Inti, staff lounge. Moments later, the lounge is dated, worn couch, flickering lights, and a vending machine humming faintly. Jake collapses onto the couch. Rex lays at his feet, finally at ease. Jake pulls out his phone and texts. J-A-K-E, texting. Uncle Steve, need you at school ASAP. Kind of urgent. We'll explain. Moments later, a buzz. Uncle Steve, text. On my way. Everything okay? Jake, text. We're fine. Some bullies tried messing with Rex. He's a hero. Just come soon. Jake slips the phone into his pocket. He looks down at Rex, who gazes back with calm, steady eyes. Just minutes ago, this same dog had exploded into action. Now, serene, loyal, controlled, like he was silently saying, I've got your back, kid. Int, staff lounge, later. Footsteps echo in the hallway. The door opens. Uncle Steve enters in uniform, eyes scanning for damage. Uncle Steve, you two okay? Jake stands, relief washing over him. Jake, yeah, I'll explain. Quickly, Jake walks him through the incident. The bullies, the stick, Rex's reaction, the principal's response. Steve's jaw tightens. Uncle Steve, grim. That's not the first time Punk's underestimated a K9. He kneels beside Rex, checking his gear and collar. Uncle Steve, gently, good job, boy. Rex wags his tail, soaking in the praise. M.R. Peterson enters. Mr. Peterson, Officer Lawson, I presume? Uncle Steve nods, standing. Yes, sir. Thank you for calling. I appreciate the school's cooperation. Mr. Peterson. We just want to make sure everyone's safe and the rules respected. Jake explained the circumstances. The issue here lies with the students who provoked the dog. Steve's face darkens. Uncle Steve, if they did this in public, I could have charged them for harassing a police animal, but school discipline will suffice. He turns to Jake, softening. Uncle Steve, you did good, kid. You used the commands I taught you. Jake, shy smile. Sort of. I mostly tried to keep him from hurting anyone. Uncle Steve smirks. That's the right call. He's trained for worse. Glad you stayed calm. Mr. Peterson, you're free to go. One of my staff will escort you just in case. If we need more details, we'll reach out. Jake. Thank you, sir. In T, school parking lot. Moments later, the trio steps outside. Sunlight streaks across the lot. A cool breeze ruffles Rex's fur. Jake exhales, tension finally beginning to unravel. Uncle Steve places a hand on his shoulder. Uncle Steve, you did good. I'll need to file a report, but it's routine. His tone drops, serious. Uncle Steve, if they ever give you trouble again, Rex or no Rex, you tell me. Jake, smiling, half relieved. I think they learned their lesson. Trevor's face when Rex snapped that stick. They picked the wrong dog. Uncle Steve chuckles. They sure did. In T, patrol, SUV, driving. Moments later, Jake in the passenger seat. Rex sprawled out in the back. Peaceful now. Jake looks back at the school building, then at Rex through the mirror. Maybe by Monday, he'd be known as the kid with the badass cop dog, not the introvert, not the new kid. And maybe that was okay. In T, Uncle Steve's house evening, Jake tosses his backpack on the floor and collapses onto the living room couch. Rex patrols briefly before curling up near Jake's feet. In the kitchen, Uncle Steve organizes paperwork, eyes drifting toward his nephew. Uncle Steve, you sure you're okay? Jake, yeah, just tired. He glances down at Rex. Jake, if he hadn't been there, I don't know what could have happened. Uncle Steve follows his gaze. Uncle Steve, he's a partner, on duty or off. But remember, he'll act if he senses danger. That can be risky if people don't understand he's canine trained. Jake shifts uncomfortably. Jake, yeah, it almost went too far. The guilt returns. Had he put Rex in danger by bringing him to school? No, he reminds himself, there wasn't a better option. In T, Pinewood High School montage. Days later, whispers follow Jake down the hall. Bullies suspended. Trevor, absent. Rumors swirl. Curious classmates glance Jake's way. One kid finally asks, "Student, is it true your dog broke a stick in half? Did he almost attack Trevor?" Jake, calmly, "Rex is a police dog. He only reacts to threats. No boasting, just fact." Still, something inside Jake shifts, a cautious pride. The bullying stops. Jake walks the halls without fear. Not just another face anymore. Int Uncle Steve's house, night a week later. Jake arrives home. Uncle Steve is in full gear, checking Rex's harness. "Uncle Steve, we got a call. Burglary in progress. Rex and I are heading out." Jake steps aside, watching them load into the SUV. The door slams, tires crunch on gravel. He stands at the window, uneasy. Rex was more than just a pet. He was in danger every time he clocked in. Int Uncle Steve's house. Hours later. Sunset. The door creaks open. Steve enters, weary. Rex pads beside him, slower than usual. Jake, what happened? Rex's tail is low. A small bandage wraps his flank. "Uncle Steve, we caught the guy. Rex brought him down. Took a cut during the scuffle. Nothing serious, but he needs rest." Jake kneels, stroking Rex gently. Jake, "At least you're okay." Rex leans into the touch. "Uncle Steve, he's aging. Small injuries add up. I don't know how much longer he'll be in the field." Jake swallows hard. Jake, "You think he'll retire soon?" Uncle Steve, "Maybe. A year, if we're lucky. When the time comes, he'll stay with me or us." Jake feels a flicker of relief and worry. Would Rex be happy without the work he loved? Int Pinewood High. Weeks later, the incident fades, but Jake's cautious when walking by the fence where it all began. Int living room, evening. Jake's phone rings. Unknown number. He answers. A familiar voice. "Trevor, OS. Hey, it's Trevor. Got your number from a friend. Just wanted to say sorry. I was a jerk." Jake is stunned. Jake, what made you call? Trevor, OS. My parents flipped. Principal warned me it could have gone on my record. I realized if that dog had snapped, I'd be wrecked. Beat. Trevor, OS. So, yeah, sorry. Jake, after a pause. Thanks, we're all lucky it didn't get worse. Trevor, OS. Tell your dog for not biting my head off. Jake almost laughs. Jake, I will. He ends the call and exhales deeply. He walks to Rex, kneels beside him. Jake, that was Trevor. He says he's sorry. Rex yawns, tail thumping lazily. Jake smiles, running a hand through the dog's fur. Jake, you really are something. The wrong dog to mess with. Rex nuzzles closer, the silent guardian, brave, loyal, and unforgettable. Fade out. A fragile calm had settled over Jake since Trevor's apology. It wasn't closure, but maybe a crack in the wall between past and present. Still the unease lingered. He couldn't shake the memory of how close things had come to unraveling that day with Rex. What if it happened again? Next time, with worse consequences. Jake pulled into the driveway and noticed Uncle Steve's patrol SUV parked out front. He stepped inside to find Steve rummaging through a kitchen cabinet, his usual composure swapped for visible tension. Rex sat alert beside him as if waiting for orders. "Everything okay?" Jake asked, setting down his backpack. Steve let out a breath. "Sort of. Got pulled into an overtime shift tonight. Big event downtown, parade detail. They're short on canine units. Jake raised an eyebrow. You're not taking Rex? Steve shook his head, stuffing some dog toys into a duffel bag. Not tonight. It's my turn on foot patrol. Plus, the chief wants Rex rested in case something big happens tomorrow. Think you can watch him? Jake nodded immediately. Yeah, of course, I'll hang out here, do some homework. He's good company. Rex gave a small wag of his tail, though his eyes betrayed disappointment. Appreciate it, Steve said, reaching into the pantry. There's extra food in the bin, and keep an eye on his back leg, still stiff from that last takedown. No roughhousing. Got it. As Steve reached the door, he paused and added, Keep the doors locked. If you leave, take your keys. We've had a string of petty thefts lately. He gave a mock salute and hurried out, leaving Jake and Rex in a quiet house. The evening rolled on peacefully. Jake finished his homework while Rex dozed on the carpet, occasionally stretching out with a soft grunt. Around 8 p.m., hunger nudged Jake to the kitchen. He heated up some leftover chicken and microwaved vegetables, the savory scent quickly drawing Rex's attention. Jake smiled, giving the dog a subtle hand signal to wait. After he finished eating, Rex got a few small bites as a reward. The house grew still, the hum of the heater and faint clinks of silverware creating a lulling background. It was the kind of night that felt safe until it wasn't. At 9:30, a thump broke the silence, not loud, just enough to raise goosebumps. Jake froze. Rex was already on his feet, ears pricked, body taut with alertness. The sound came again, a rustle, this time near the side of the house. Probably just a raccoon, Jake whispered, more for his own benefit than Rex's, but Steve's warning rang in his ears. He rose slowly, Rex gliding to his side like a shadow. Jake peeked through the peephole. Nothing, just the dark yard and a faint shimmer of streetlight off wet leaves. Another sound, a metallic scrape near the garage. Jake's stomach flipped. That was no animal. Stay, he whispered, placing a hand on Rex's collar. The dog trembled, not with fear, but with restrained focus.
Jake flicked off the living room light to kill the glare on the window. Then, beneath the lamplight, he saw it. A figure hunched near the garage, moving with deliberate purpose. Human. Someone was trying to break in. Adrenaline surged. Jake grabbed his phone with shaking fingers and dialed 911. The operator's voice came quickly. Calm, practiced. Tell me what you're seeing. Jake described the intruder as best he could. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Hoodie, dark pants. He's trying to open a window now. Beside him, Rex emitted a low growl. His eyes locked on the door. Stay inside, operator said firmly. Police are on the way. Do not engage. Jake nodded even though she couldn't see. Every second dragged like a century. Then the sound of distant sirens sliced through the night. The intruder looked up sharply, panicked, and bolted, sprinting across the lawn and disappearing behind a neighbor's hedge. Jake ran to the window, heart pounding, just in time to see flashing red and blue lights sweep down the block. He exhaled, body sagging with a sudden release of fear. It's okay, he murmured to Rex, who remained rigid, tail lowered, waiting for the all-clear. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt. Officers spilled out, flashlights sweeping the property. Jake cracked the door and waved, keeping Rex leashed to the side. A tall officer approached, hand resting near his holster. You the one who called? Yes, sir. Jake managed, still breathless. He was at the side window. Ran off when he heard the sirens. We'll try to track him, the officer said. Stay inside. Jake and Rex obeyed. From the windows, Jake watched as officers canvassed the neighborhood. The intruder was gone, leaving only a bent window frame behind. Finally, a knock. Police, came a muffled voice. Jake checked the peephole, then opened the door. No luck, the officer said. He probably jumped a few fences and vanished. But you did the right thing calling us. Jake nodded. Relief and frustration warred in his chest. They took a quick statement and left, promising to file a report. As the patrol cars pulled away, Jake finally let himself relax. Barely. Later, in his room, the house wrapped in silence once more. Jake sat on his bed with Rex curled at his feet. The clock read past 10. His nerves still buzzed like static under his skin. You're a real guardian, he whispered, resting his forehead against Rex's. The dog huffed softly, warm breath against Jake's cheek. Eventually, fatigue won. Jake double-checked the locks, shut off the lights, and climbed into bed. Rex hopped up beside him, resting his chin on Jake's leg. Jake stared at the ceiling. In just 1 month, Bullies at school, a near break in 100 home, all with Rex right there protecting him. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. A few days later, Steve noticed a quiet in Jake's eyes. He found him at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone while Rex napped nearby. "Kiddo," Steve said, pulling out a chair. "You've been through a lot lately. Everything okay?" Jake looked up slowly. "I'm fine. Just thinking. About the break-in or school?" Jake gave a tired shrug. "Both. It's like the world's just waiting to test you when you have a dog like Rex. Like trouble follows him." Steve nodded, letting the words settle. "It can feel that way, but Rex is trained for threats. We just notice them more because he's always ready for them." Jake hesitated. "You ever get scared?" "All the time," Steve admitted. "Every time I send him into a building alone, my heart's in my throat. Fear's normal. It keeps us alert. The trick is not letting it stop you." Jake absorbed that, then asked the question he'd been avoiding. "If Rex retires, does he go away? Or do we keep him?" Steve didn't hesitate. "I keep him. No question. He's family." That simple answer hit deeper than Jake expected. "You're ready for him to just be a full-time house dog?" "Yeah, he's earned it." Jake exhaled, tension uncoiling from his shoulders. Just then, the doorbell rang. Rex jumped to his feet, stepping protectively in front of Jake, growling low. Steve calmly laid a hand on his harness. "Easy, boy." Jake peeked through the window. A UPS driver. They exhaled in unison. Steve retrieved the small box. "New chew toy for Rex. Hopefully it spares your sneakers." Jake smiled faintly. "Guess we're all a little jumpy." He paused. "I was thinking maybe I could learn more commands. So next time, if something happens." Steve studied him for a moment, then nodded. "That's not a bad idea. We'll start small, but you have to be careful. His training isn't for play." Jake's eyes lit with resolve. "I just want to be ready." That evening, under a dusky sky, they set up a short training session in the backyard. Steve handed Jake the leash. "Stand tall. Stay calm. Rex watches more than he listens." Jake took a breath. Rex heeled. The dog moved to Jake's left side, precise and ready. They practiced stay, then prepared for the real test. Steve slipped on a padded bite sleeve. He knows this from drills. Just watch how he reacts. He took a few paces, turning back with a mock-aggressive stance. Rex tensed, growling low. Jake's heart raced. "Rex, stand down." For a second, Rex looked ready to lunge, muscles tight, eyes locked on Steve. Then he glanced at Jake, reading his steady stance, and backed off with a frustrated huff. Jake exhaled, heart thudding in his chest. Steve grinned. "Not bad at all." Jake rubbed Rex's side. "We've got each other's backs." And in the growing twilight, surrounded by fading tension and unspoken trust, that felt like enough for now. Jake stepped forward and gently patted Rex's flank. "That was incredible," he said, his voice still tight with adrenaline. Steve nodded, pride in his eyes. "You kept your cool. That's exactly what we want." Jake exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Relief washed through him, followed by a flicker of pride that warmed him from the inside out. In that moment, something clicked, not just between commands and actions, but between two beings wired for different worlds. Jake wasn't just watching Rex anymore. He was beginning to understand him. The discipline, the precision, the deep-rooted instinct to protect and serve. It wasn't just impressive. It was humbling. They ran through the drills a few more times until the dust from their movements hung thick in the late afternoon air. Eventually, the adrenaline faded into a steady hum, and Jake felt a quiet satisfaction settle in. He glimpsed the razor edge of control that made Rex exceptional, and how close to chaos things could fall without it. His thoughts flashed back to the bullies at school, to the helplessness that had once curled in his chest like smoke. He thought of what could have happened if Rex hadn't been there that day. A shove too hard, a panic spiral, one wrong move, and now he saw what had saved him wasn't just a dog. It was training, trust, a bond built on clarity. "Thanks for this," Jake said as they walked Rex inside, both of them dusty and tired. "I don't feel like I'll freeze up if something happens again." Steve ruffled his nephew's hair. "You did great. Just remember, this isn't a game. These dogs aren't toys. One wrong command at the wrong moment could end in disaster." Jake nodded slowly, the weight of it settling in. "Yeah, I get it." As they settled in for the night, Jake couldn't stop thinking about what Steve had said. Would Rex always be this sharp, this ready? Or would there come a day when he'd trade vests for naps, drills for belly rubs, after his shower and homework? Jake lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as soft thumps echoed through the hallway. Then, a familiar silhouette appeared in his doorway. Rex, watching, waiting. Jake smiled. "Come here," he whispered. Rex padded in and curled up at the foot of the bed, ever alert, ears twitching at the smallest sound. Jake let his eyes drift close to the rhythm of Rex's slow, steady breathing. The world outside could turn upside down in an instant, but here, in this room, there was calm. There was loyalty. There was something like safety. He was learning what it meant to be the partner Rex deserved, not just giving commands, but earning trust. And as sleep finally claimed him, Jake felt ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, because he wasn't alone anymore. Not really. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the room in warm bands. Jake woke to the sound of Rex's paws patting down the hallway and felt, for the first time in weeks, genuinely rested. The fear from the break-in had gnawed at his sleep every night since. But last night had been different. Pulling on a hoodie, he made his way to the kitchen. Uncle Steve sat at the table, coffee in hand, the morning paper open. Rex lay curled at his feet, tail giving a small thump as Jake entered. "Morning," Jake mumbled, grabbing juice from the fridge. Steve looked up. "Sleep okay?" Jake nodded. "Yeah, actually." He gave Rex a scratch behind the ears before his gaze caught the front page of the newspaper. Spike in local burglaries continues. A blurry still from a neighbor's security camera showed a shadowy figure mid-sprint. Jake's stomach twisted. They never caught the guy who tried our garage, did they? Steve's jaw tensed slightly. "Not yet, but we're getting closer. The department thinks it's part of a coordinated ring. Same MO, same area." Jake looked down at Rex. "At least we've got him," he said quietly. It was more than comfort. It was armor. School passed without incident. Jake noticed Marshall near the lockers at one point, but the boy's eyes quickly shifted away. No taunts, no threats, just avoidance. Rex's reputation had clearly done its work. After the final bell, Jake biked home, replaying yesterday's commands in his head. He was already planning another practice session with Rex before dinner. The more he prepared, the more in control he felt, the more like a real partner. But something felt off the moment he pulled into the driveway. Uncle Steve's SUV was already there. He rushed inside. Steve was pacing the living room. Phone pressed his ear. Rex sat alert near his boots, sensing the tension. "Yeah," Steve said into the phone, his tone clipped. "We'll gear up and be there in an hour." He ended the call and raked a hand through his hair. When he looked at Jake, there was a tired, guarded smile. "Hey, kid, how was school?" Jake blinked. "Fine. What's happening?" "We got a lead. The burglary crew might be targeting a warehouse by the old rail tracks tonight. They need K9 units. Rex and I are going in." Jake's heart skipped. "So it's like a stakeout?" "More like a sweep," Steve said, already heading to the gear closet. "We'll secure the area and wait. If they show, we move." Rex trotted after him, tail wagging, not playfully, but with purpose. He knew it was time to work. Jake watched, his throat tight. "Be careful," he said quietly. Steve paused, his hand on the doorframe. Always, by the time the patrol SUV disappeared into the night, the house felt empty. Jake tried focusing on homework, but his mind was stuck in a loop. What if something went wrong? By 9 p.m., he was pacing. By 10:30, the world outside had gone still, and Jake was a bundle of frayed nerves until headlights swept the driveway. He bolted to the door and flung it open. Steve stood there, exhausted, a grim look on his face. And beside him, Rex, limping, leaning against his leg, one ear bloodied. Jake froze. "Is he?" "He's okay," Steve said quickly, though his voice shook. "Took a hit during the arrest. Cut ear, some bruising, not life-threatening, but we'll need to watch him." Jake dropped to his knees a moment they were inside, his hand finding Rex's side. The dog gave a soft whine and licked his wrist. "You brave boy," Jake murmured, barely holding back tears. Steve crouched beside him, removing Rex's vest with care. He chased down the last guy. The suspect had a metal rod, got one swing in. Jake's heart twisted. It could have been worse. How many close calls would it take before one of them was too much? "I'll get towels," he said, bolting to the bathroom. Together, they cleaned the wound and coaxed Rex onto a blanket. The dog flinched but stayed still, trusting them. Steve sank into the chair nearby. They caught them all. Every last one of them. He let out a breath that sounded like a release valve. Rex was amazing, but seeing him get hurt like that, he didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. Jake swallowed hard. "You thinking about retiring him?" Steve didn't answer right away. "We'll see what the vet says. He's had a string of rough calls lately. If this is becoming a pattern, I won't risk him getting truly hurt." Jake looked at Rex, the warrior, the protector, now asleep and twitching softly in his dreams. Maybe chasing something, maybe fleeing from it. "But he lives for this," Jake whispered. "He needs a job, and we need him," Steve said. "Alive, healthy." "Oh." They sat in silence for a while. The lamp cast soft shadows over Rex's sleeping form. 3 lives connected not by blood, but by trust and battles shared. Some seen, some still unfolding. Jake reached out and gently placed a hand over Rex's paw. "He's our guardian," he said. "But maybe now, maybe it's our turn to guard him." The morning sun crept through the curtain, casting pale lines across the living room floor, but it brought little warmth. Jake stirred awake on the couch, neck sore and back stiff from a restless night spent watching over Rex. The German shepherd lay curled beside him, his breathing shallow and uneven, occasionally twitching in his sleep. A soft whimper escaped the dog's throat, echoing the tension in the room. From the armchair, Uncle Steve sat up with a groan, rubbing his face before kneeling beside Rex. He gently peeled back the edge of the bandage on the dog's ear, inspecting the wound. "How's he doing?" Jake asked, voice still hoarse from sleep, but eyes sharp with worry. Steve stroked Rex's shoulder. "He's hanging in, sleeping on and off. Doesn't seem to be in serious pain, but he's not himself." As if hearing him, Rex shifted, nudging Steve's hand with his nose, acknowledging concern but clearly drained. "We'll head to the department vet today," Steve said. "If it's just bruising and the ear cut, he might bounce back in a few days. But I want a full exam to be sure." Jake nodded, though a lump formed in his throat. "You think he'll be okay to keep working? Steve exhaled, pausing longer than usual. We'll see. Physically? Maybe. But he's had a few too many close calls lately. His voice caught. Jake, I can't risk him getting seriously hurt. Not again. He's family. Jake reached down, placing his hand on Rex's side. The dog's chest rose and fell with each breath, steady but labored, as though the weight of his service clung to every inhale. I get it, Jake whispered. I don't want him to feel lost if he retires. Steve gave a tired smile. He might miss the job, sure, but dogs adapt. He's got us, and that might be enough. Later that morning, they gently helped Rex into the patrol SUV. The dog moved slowly, stiff with pain, and Jake made sure his head rested on his lap for the ride. He stroked Rex's fur absent-mindedly, staring out the window, dreading what they might hear. At the vet clinic, a cheerful tech greeted them and ushered them into an exam room. She gave Rex a gentle pat. We'll run some x-rays, just to rule out anything deeper than bruising. He's a tough guy, but let's be thorough. Jake and Steve waited in the hallway, pacing. Familiar officers passed by, offering nods of sympathy. It was a silent understanding. They all knew what it meant when AK-9 started showing signs of wear. When the vet finally returned, she stripped off her gloves and gave them a small, reassuring smile. No fractures, muscle bruising, and a torn ear, but nothing permanent. He'll need rest, but he's lucky. Another inch lower, and this could have been worse. Steve let out a slow breath. So he'll recover. Yes, she confirmed. Then her tone shifted. But you mentioned recent close calls. Sometimes dogs reach a threshold, not physically, but emotionally. If this keeps up, retirement might be the kindest option, even if it can continue. Jake's heart sank. Uncle Steve's expression darkened, conflicted. We'll talk about it, he murmured. They guided Rex back to the SUV. The dog's gait was slow but determined. On the ride home, silence hung between them until Jake broke it. So, are you going to retire him? Steve gripped the wheel tighter. I'll speak with the captain. Part of the decision's mine. But the department gets a say, too. If they think he's still fit, they may keep him for light duties. No takedowns or high-stress calls. But if I sense he's slipping, even a little, I'll push for retirement. Jake looked down at Rex, who leaned into him with a soft pant. Would that be so bad? He asked quietly. If it means he's safe? Steve shook his head. Not bad, just different. These dogs live for the job, but they deserve peace too. Back at home, they laid Rex on a thick blanket and gave him his meds. He accepted the pampering without resistance, tail wagging slightly. When he began to lick at his bandaged ear, Jake nudged him gently. Leave that alone, buddy, he said with a soft smile. Later that afternoon, Jake's phone buzzed with an unexpected text. It was from Trevor. Heard about your dog. Hope he's okay. Jake blinked at the screen. He hadn't told anyone about Rex's injury. Word must have spread. He tapped out a simple reply. He's resting. Thanks. Funny. The kid who once made him feel cornered was now reaching out. Maybe things were shifting. That evening, with Steve out filing paperwork, Jake finished his homework at the dining table, stealing glances at Rex every few minutes. The dog twitched in his sleep, caught in some dream, maybe chasing suspects or running free in the yard. Jake wondered what retirement would look like for a dog like Rex. Would he be bored or finally at peace? When Steve returned, he looked exhausted, a stack of folders in one arm. He sank into the armchair and ran a hand down his face. I talked to the captain, he said quietly. They're not pushing retirement yet. They'll support whatever I decide after Rex recovers. But if there's one more incident like that, he didn't finish the sentence. Jake nodded, throat tight. How do you think he'll handle it? Steve looked down at Rex and sighed. He'll handle it fine. As long as he's with us. He trusts me. Maybe we build a new routine. Fewer patrols. More walks. He's earned a soft landing. Jake crouched beside Rex and hugged him gently. The dog licked his cheek, pressing closer with a soft whine. You deserve a break, Jake whispered. Nobody gets to hurt you again. Over a quiet dinner, leftover pasta and fresh coffee, the heaviness began to lift. The house felt different, quieter, but not broken, just in transition. Later, Steve pulled out an old scrapbook and opened it on the coffee table. Photos of Rex in his prime filled the pages. Leaping through obstacle courses, accepting a medal at AK-9 competition, sitting proudly beside children at a community fair. He's had a hell of a career, Steve murmured, tapping a photo of Rex beside fellow canines. Never hesitated to protect people, but every hero's journey ends eventually. Jake swallowed hard. He finally understood. Picking on the wrong dog wasn't about facing a fierce animal. It was about misunderstanding the heart behind the uniform, the loyalty, the sacrifice, the soul of a protector. Rex had given his all. Maybe now it was time to give something back. That night, as Jake headed to bed, he ran a hand through Rex's fur. The dog blinked up at him, eyes calm and full of quiet trust. Whatever came next, one more shift or a permanent retirement, Jake knew the bond they shared wouldn't fade. They'd stood together against bullies and burglars, and they'd faced the next chapter the same way, side by side. If only he could tell me what he wants. But until then, I have to be his voice. That thought lingered in Jake's mind like a quiet vow. He watched Rex trot toward the backyard tunnel, tail swaying, glancing back with unmistakable mischief. The dog paused, almost as if waiting for permission to let go of everything. Pain, duty, questions. Just to play. Jake crouched low. Go on, he urged with a soft smile, gesturing with his hand. Rex exploded into motion, charging to the tunnel like a rocket, tail high, ears perked. He popped out the other end with a triumphant bark, circling back in a happy sprint. Jake couldn't help but laugh. He's amazing. Always has been, Uncle Steve said, his voice rich with quiet pride. That night, the kitchen light cast long shadows across the table as Steve sifted through paperwork, retirement policies, alternate duty programs, incomplete case reports. It wasn't just red tape. It was a framework of a possible farewell. Rex lay curled beside Steve's chair, snoring softly, his body spent from play. Jake lingered in the doorway, half curious, half afraid of what he might hear. The phone rang, shattering the quiet. Steve snatched it up. Yes, Captain. A pause. Right. The evaluation's still on. I'll confirm tomorrow. Jake's stomach tightened. Steve hung up and looked over. They're running a final test, he said, his voice neutral. Basic obedience. Controlled scenario response. If he passes, he can stay on some capacity at least. Jake swallowed hard. And if he doesn't, if they see any distress or lingering injury, Steve trailed off, gaze landing on Rex's bandaged ear. Jake's throat burned. Could they force retirement? They can recommend it, Steve replied with a shrug that didn't fool anyone. But in the end, it's my call. Still, the captain's opinion carries weight. They didn't say much after that. Each retreated into their own thoughts. Steve to the mountains of paperwork, Jake to the sanctuary of his room. He tried to lose himself in video games, but the controller felt heavy in his hands. The noise didn't drown out the montage running through his head. Bullies cornering him, burglars breaking in, Rex taking hits that should have been his. Should Rex still be the one taking those hits? Eventually, Jake gave up. The controller went silent. He laid back on his bed and stared at the ceiling until restless sleep pulled him under. He woke to daylight peeking through his blinds, body stiff, mind foggy. The house was quiet. Steve must have gone in early for paperwork. Jake wandered out, rubbing his eyes. On the couch, Rex lifted his head to second Jake, stepped into the room. The dog patted over and rested his muzzle on Jake's knee, eyes warm, tail thumping softly. Morning, boy, Jake whispered, his hand drifting through Rex's fur. A surge of affection swept over him. Whatever the test said, one thing was certain. Rex was his in every way that mattered. Whether on duty or retired, that wouldn't change. The next 2 days crawled by. Steve finalized the test schedule and ran short backyard drills. Jake helped when he could, giving Rex commands he'd learned. The dog obeyed flawlessly. Heel, stay, stand down. No limp, no hesitation. But Jake still felt a pulse of dread with every step Rex took. Then came the morning. Jake stood by the front door, backpack slung over his shoulder, one foot itching to head to school, the other firmly rooted in place. Rex bounced around like a pup, his harness secured, oblivious to the stakes ahead. Steve gave Jake's shoulder a squeeze. Wish us luck, kid. Jake crouched and kissed Rex's head. Good luck, pal, he whispered, barely holding back the knot rising in his throat. The SUV pulled away, leaving Jake staring after it with a sinking feeling. He climbed on his bike and pedaled toward school, wind on his face, nerves tangled in his chest. Whatever happens, no one's ever going to underestimate this dog again. He's earned that. Steve and Rex arrived at the police training facility just as the fog lifted from the morning grass. Rows of obstacle courses, training stations, and government SUVs sprawled out before them. Rex jumped out of the car and took a deep breath, nostrils flaring like he knew exactly where he was. Easy, boy, Steve murmured, adjusting Rex's vest. A broad-shouldered man approached with a clipboard in hand. Sergeant Harris. Morning, Larson, he greeted with a firm nod. Ready for the evaluation? Steve straightened. As ready as we can be. His hand swept along Rex's back. The muscles felt solid. The ear was healing. But that didn't stop the gnawing unease. Harris glanced at his clipboard. We got a basic obedience round, a short track, and if he's up for it, suspect apprehension. Steve hesitated for a heartbeat. Apprehension test carried the highest risk, but skipping it could cost him. Okay, he said finally. We'll try. They moved to a wide, open field. At one end, a junior officer waited with bike gear. Another had laid a scent trail. The breeze carried the scent of damp grass and challenge. Harris gave the signal. Start with recall and agility. Steve led Rex to the far side of the field and unclipped the leash. Rex, go. The dog bolted across the grass like a missile, tail streaming behind him. Harris clapped. Come here, buddy. Rex stopped on a dime, then turned sharply when Steve whistled. Here. Rex obeyed instantly, racing back and landing at Steve's feet, panting happily. Pride surged in Steve's chest. Next came the obstacle course. Hurdles, a short tunnel, a small platform. Rex nailed each one. Smooth, controlled, no limping, no flinching. Even ear barely twitched. Looking good, Harris muttered, jotting notes. Strong form, no hesitation. Then he looked up. Apprehension. Steve's heart pounded. Rex stood tall, ears alert, posture perfect. He's ready, Steve said. Let's go. They entered a fenced training area. A suited officer posed as a suspect. The scenario scenario was simple. Flee, engage, release on command. Steve knelt by Rex. Heel. Rex locked in. The mock suspect yelled, "You'll never catch me," and ran. Steve waited a beat. Rex, get him. The dog launched like a rocket, muscles bunching, eyes focused. He closed the distance fast. The padded sleeve came up, and Rex clamped down with precision. Not wild, not reckless, just controlled, trained power. The suspect stumbled, but Rex held the sleeve firmly, growling low. "Rex, down," Steve called out. Instant obedience. Rex dropped to the ground, watching but no longer biting. The suspect stood and nodded. "Textbook," Harris said. "Perfect timing." They repeated a shorter scenario to confirm consistency. Again, flawless. No limping, no strain, just a crisp shake and a ready stance. Harris scribbled furiously, eyebrows raised. "Honestly, Larson, he's in great shape. No signs of trauma, physically or mentally. If you're comfortable, I'll clear him for active duty." Steve blinked. He'd won, but something inside held him back. The memory of that night. The blood, the scream, the panic, it hadn't faded. They had passed the test. But did that mean Rex should go back to full risk? "He passed," Steve said softly, "but I'd like to keep him on specialized duty. Detection, maybe search and rescue. No high-risk apprehensions unless absolutely necessary." Harris nodded. "Wise call. Just say the word when you want to switch tracks." Steve knelt beside Rex. "You crushed it, buddy." Rex wagged his tail, licking Steve's hand as if to say, "Of course I did." They drove home beneath the golden wash of noon sunlight. Steve gripped the wheel, 100 memories dancing behind his eyes. Rex as a clumsy rookie. The time he sniffed out a missing girl. The first time he barked at danger for Jake. He glanced at Rex in the rearview mirror. Still here, still strong, but now wiser. As they pulled into the driveway, Jake's bike leaned against the porch. Jake burst to the front door the moment the SUV rolled in. "Well," he asked, eyes wide. Steve stepped out, Rex trotting beside him. He passed with flying colors, kid. Still the wrong dog for any troublemaker to mess with. Rex barked in agreement. Jake laughed, wrapping his arms around Rex. "Awesome." Then softer, "So he's staying?" "Yeah," Steve said, "but only for specialized duty. Safer tasks. The department's on board." Jake let out a breath. He didn't know he'd been holding. "Good. That's really good." Rex wagged so hard his whole body wiggled. In that moment, man, boy, and dog, they knew they'd found a balance, a path forward, one that honored Rex's strength without asking him to bleed for it again. And for however long his loyal heart kept beating, Rex would remain the one dog no coward, crook, or bully should ever underestimate. Despite the tension hanging in the air, Jake let out a quiet chuckle. "Yeah, he's not the dog you want to provoke." Uncle Steve, picking up on the moment, gently rested a hand on Rex's collar and pulled the door open. "Rex is actually a sweetheart, as long as you don't give him a reason not to be. Want to say hi?" Trevor hesitated. Apprehension flitted across his face, but curiosity edged out fear. He stepped inside, his gaze locked on the German shepherd like he expected him to pounce. Rex sniffed the air, ears perked, but he didn't growl, didn't bare his teeth. Instead, he padded forward, tail low, but wagging, muzzle reaching out. Trevor inhaled slowly, extended his hand. Rex gave a good sniff, then licked his fingers in a brief, polite greeting. Jake saw it happen. Trevor's posture relaxed, the tightness in his shoulders easing just a bit. "Told you," Jake said, voice low. "He's not looking to fight. Just don't show up swinging sticks." "Right." Trevor breathed out, a half-laugh breaking through his nerves. He scratched Rex behind the ears, and the dog leaned in, no grudge, no lingering resentment, only trust. Trevor's shoulders slumped as relief washed over him. "He's cooler than I thought," he murmured, almost embarrassed. Steve stood back, arms crossed, watching the exchange with a thoughtful expression and the faintest smile. The apology wouldn't erase the past, but it meant something. For a kid like Trevor, swallowing his pride and walking up to that door took guts. Trevor cleared his throat awkwardly and stepped back. "Anyway, I'm sorry. Really." Jake gave a small nod, arms folded but voice steady. "It's behind us. Let's keep it there." Trevor muttered a quick goodbye and slipped out. The tension ebbed away the moment the door clicked shut. Steve locked up, then gave Jake a knowing look. "That took courage," he said quietly. "Your dog made quite the impression." Jake ran a hand down Rex's side. "Best outcome we could have hoped for. Nobody got hurt. Lesson learned." The rest of the day passed in a light, almost buoyant mood. Steve sat at the kitchen table finalizing paperwork for Rex's updated duty assignment, while Jake helped cook dinner, grilled chicken and vegetables, simple and comforting. They talked about school, the upcoming weekend, and ways to keep Rex mentally sharp without putting him in danger. That evening, Jake lay sprawled on the living room floor, running through basic commands with Rex for the 100th time. "Stay," Jake said, stepping back. crack. Rex didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Jake's, muscles taut with focus. Okay, come. Rex launched forward with joyful precision, tail wagging. Jake grinned. The routine felt sacred now, a language only the two of them spoke. From the couch, Uncle Steve sipped tea and watched. You've gotten good at this, he noted. Rex respects you. Jake shrugged, cheeks warming. He's easy to respect. After everything, images flashed through his mind. Rex shattering a bully stick, lunging at a would-be burglar, pushing through pain to protect. He's saved me in more ways than one, Jake said softly. Steve set down his tea. He has that effect on people. Even with the weight of Rex's changing role, the night felt calm, peaceful. Rex dozed between them, paws twitching in sleep. Before bed, Jake scrolled through his phone. No messages, no rumors, no drama. Just quiet. Maybe things were settling down. Trevor's awkward smile lingered in Jake's thoughts, and for once, he allowed himself to believe that people really could change, even the ones who once acted like enemies. Jake stood, heading toward his room. Rex rose and followed, ears twitching at each creak of the old house. When Jake crawled into bed, Rex did a few slow circles at the foot, then settled, watchful as always. In the quiet dark, they drifted into sleep, boy and dog, protector and partner. Tomorrow would bring something new, maybe a test, maybe peace. Either way, Jake had faith, because no burglar could beat Rex's nose. No bully dared challenge a dog who could snap a weapon in half. And thanks to Uncle Steve's careful planning, Rex's future felt safer than ever. A soft wind whispered through the trees outside. Jake's last waking thought was simple, powerful. Most people never get a second chance, but somehow Rex had, and he'd used it to become more than a working dog. He'd become family. The next morning, a crisp autumn breeze drifted in as Jake fed Rex and changed the dressing on his ear. The wound had nearly healed, but the pink scar would always be there, a quiet reminder of how close they'd come. Steve had already left for work, now confident enough to trust Jake with Rex during his lighter duty days. With Rex's new role came a steadier rhythm, routine drug checks, building sweeps, none of the adrenaline-pumping chases that once defined his career. Jake felt relief each time Rex returned home unscathed, and Rex, he seemed happier, still eager to serve, but more relaxed. The pressure was off. You like this better, huh? Jake murmured, scratching Rex's side. Same job, less danger. Rex blinked up at him with warm, steady eyes, as if to say, I'm here for whatever you need. Weeks passed like that. School, homework, weekend training sessions. Sometimes Steve brought Rex in for brief station work, but he always came home before dark. There were no late-night emergencies, no injuries, no new gossip at school. Trevor's crew kept their distance. Peace had settled over Pinewood, like a long overdue sigh. One Saturday, they went for a walk, just a walk. No duty, no danger. They drove to the wooded park at the edge of town. Jake packed snacks and water, while Steve adjusted Rex's comfort harness, not the official one, just something light. Rex bounded out of the car, tail flying. Steve chuckled. He still got that fire. Jake laughed. Retirement would have bored him to death. This role, it fits. Rex trotted ahead, sniffing leaves and greeting joggers. No one flinched. No one stared. The K-9 who once intimidated was now part of the community, still respected, but no longer feared. They reached the creek. Jake crouched beside the water, tossing pebbles, while Rex lapped at the cool stream. Steve perched on a fallen log, sipping from a thermos. You know, Steve said after a moment, the captain's happy with Rex's performance. Solid work. No complaints. He thinks he'll be good for another year or two before full retirement. Jake exhaled. That's perfect. Enough time to do what he loves. But safe. Steve watched as Rex chase a drifting leaf. This feels right. Balance. Jake nodded slowly. Remember how crazy things were just a month ago? Bullies. The break-in. I thought we might lose him. Steve's eyes darkened briefly. I did too. But I've learned something. Danger doesn't knock politely. It just shows up. Having Rex around, it matters, as long as we protect him, too. Jake tossed another pebble, watching the ripples widen. He remembered Trevor's sneer, the broken stick, Rex's growl, the burglar's shadow in their home. Every scary moment had led to this one. Quiet, safe, and hard-earned. Jake turned to Steve. I think we learned something, too. It's not just about letting Rex protect us. We have to protect him. Steve smiled, proud and quiet. Exactly. He's a warrior, but he's also family. Rex trotted back to them, panting and happy. Jake scratched behind his ears, feeling the peace settle in his chest. Not every dog gets a second chapter, but Rex did. And in that second chapter, he wasn't just a fighter. He was finally allowed to be a companion, a friend, and still a hero. Rex's hackles lifted slightly, his head turning with sharp precision toward a commotion by the tree line. His muscles went taut. Jake noticed immediately. The dog wasn't just alert. He was focused, locked in on something wrong. Jake followed his gaze, just past the food booths and the swirling crowd. Two figures scuffled behind a vendor tent. One wore a bulky jacket. The other shouted shouted something Jake couldn't make out. Then a voice broke through the fair's noise like glass shattering. "Stop him. He's got my bag." Jake's heart jerked in his chest. A thief, broad daylight, packed fairgrounds, families and kids everywhere. He glanced around for Uncle Steve, but his uncle had disappeared into the crowd. Most fairgoers remained oblivious, drawn in by the music and food. But Rex let out a short, sharp bark, not a greeting, a warning. Jake tightened his grip on the leash. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a schoolyard scuffle. Someone was in danger. Without a second thought, Jake pushed through the crowd. "Move, please," he called, weaving past startled bystanders, his pulse pounding in his ears. Rex stayed close, his body bristling with restrained tension. They reached the edge of the vendor tents, just in time to see a man in a hoodie rip a purse from a woman's arms. She stumbled back, eyes wide with fear, while the thief turned and sprinted right toward the crowd. If he made it into the mass of people, anything could happen. He could disappear. He could lash out. He could be armed. Jake's instinct screamed for action, but so did caution. Rex had been retrained. No more aggressive chases. No bites unless absolutely necessary. But the man was barreling toward them, and there was no time for doubt. Then the suspect spotted Rex. He faltered, just a second of hesitation, but it was enough. Panic overtook him. He veered sharply, almost toppling a pottery display in his attempt to flee. The woman gave chase, shouting through tears, but she couldn't keep up. Jake stood frozen for a heartbeat. Then a shout rang out from deeper in the crowd. "He's armed." That changed everything. Jake's breath hitched. He couldn't confirm it, but fear twisted in his gut like barbed wire. Uncle Steve, he thought desperately, scanning the sea of faces. Nothing. He turned back to Rex, who stood at his side, gaze never leaving the fleeing suspect. Jake took a deep breath, his voice cracking with adrenaline. "Rex, find." The command was simple, clear, one they'd practiced dozens of times. Rex shot forward, nose low, ears swiveling like radar. Jake ran behind him, dodging startled fairgoers. Gas erupted as people saw the dog in motion, some stepping aside, others pointing. The chase was on. Near a cooking demo tent, the suspect reappeared, face red, sweat on his brow, stolen bag clutched to his chest. He spotted Rex closing in and ducked behind the tent, hoping to lose them, but Rex didn't lose trails, ever. Jake rounded the corner just as the man rifled through the purse, searching for valuables. Their eyes met. The suspect expression twisted. Fear, rage, desperation. Rex barked once, sharp and guttural, a clear warning. The man didn't freeze. Instead, he grabbed a metal pole from a nearby display and brandished it like a weapon. Jake's heart stuttered. He saw it again, Trevor's stick, the chaos behind the school, the fear, the helplessness. But this time was different. This time, Jake wasn't helpless. He squared his shoulders. "Drop it," he shouted. "Don't move." His voice didn't waver. Rex stepped forward, growling, his body a coiled spring of control. The man hesitated, glancing between the snarling dog and Jake's outstretched arm. Then he made the worst possible choice. He bolted. Rex lunged, but not to bite. His training held. Jake hadn't issued the takedown command. Instead, Rex darted ahead, cutting off the escape route, forcing the suspect back against a stack of crates. The dog bared his teeth, jaws snapping inches from the man's leg. The thief froze, terror locking his limbs. Jake caught up, breath ragged. He planted his feet, leash taut. "Rex, stay." Rex obeyed instantly, though the growl in his throat didn't fade. The suspect stood trembling, the stolen bag slipping from his grip. Then help arrived. An older couple ran over, eyes wide. A uniformed officer followed seconds later, his weapon drawn. "Drop to the ground," he barked. The suspect raised his hands and crumpled to his knees, defeated. Jake exhaled so hard he nearly collapsed. Rex stood firm at his side, poised but calm. The officer moved quickly, cuffing the suspect, retrieving the bag. The woman who'd been robbed arrived moments later, tears streaking her face as she hugged the recovered purse. Uncle Steve burst through the crowd just as everything settled, his expression stricken. His eyes scanned the scene. Jake, Rex, the suspect. Relief poured through him. "You're okay," he breathed, his voice thick. Jake nodded, still trembling. Rex nudged his leg, muzzle warm against Jake's jeans. A surge of pride swelled in Jake's chest. They had done it. Without force, without chaos. Rex had held the line. Jake had found his voice. And in that moment, the crowd began to clap. It started slow. A few hands. Then more. Cheers, whistles, praise. The officer leaned down to scratch Rex behind the ears. "Good boy. Real good boy." The woman sobbed her thanks. "You saved me," she whispered. "Both of you." Jake could barely speak. His voice had been strong a moment ago, but now it was thick with emotion. Uncle Steve guided him away from the crowd, one hand on Jake's shoulder, the the other resting on Rex's back. "Kid," he said, voice husky. "You, both of you, holy smokes." He knelt and pulled Rex into a hug. Minimal force, maximum control. That's what a specialized K9 was supposed to be, and they'd pulled it off. Jake laughed softly, tears in his eyes. He whispered into Rex's fur, still the wrong dog to mess with. Rex licked his cheek, tail thumping gently. As fair staff, police, and grateful onlookers offered thanks, Jake felt too full of adrenaline and gratitude to process it all. But one thing was clear. The climax wasn't the arrest. It was a choice not to escalate. It was restraint. It was trust. Rex had proved that even on a toned-down assignment, he was still a force to be reckoned with. And Jake, the nervous kid who once tripped over his words, had commanded that force with clarity and heart. As the thief was led away and the fair returned to its rhythms, Jake walked beside Uncle Steve and Rex with a quiet pride humming in his chest. They'd found the balance. Not every fight needed to end in a bite. Sometimes a victory came from stopping one.